Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. And it really is me, friends. I have a cold. I'm doing okay. I have a glass of water next to me, so if I start coughing, just bear with me. I just really want to get this episode recorded so we don't have to miss a week. So, welcome back for another Legal Tea episode today, episode 116. Today's topic is a current trend, and on this type of episode, we dive into something going on in the current time that just seems really pertinent to talk about on here. Today's episode may not be everybody's cup of tea. Yes, pun very much intended. But today we're going to be talking about taxes. Womp womp, I know. It's not a sexy topic at all. It's not fun. Nope, not even a little bit. But I've thought many times about doing an episode on how the estate tax exemption, the estate tax exclusion amount is supposed to sunset or decrease at the end of 2025. And I think I would be doing you all a disservice if I didn't at least put one episode out on this topic, some sort of content out on this topic, because it really is super relevant to my estate world. I just know taxes aren't always a blast to talk about, so let's see if I can make it informative and fun, and I'm up for the challenge. Before we even get started on this specific topic, I think it's incredibly important to get crystal clear on what estate taxes even are. And I say this because so many get these types of taxes confused. So super generally speaking, there are two types of taxes that are pertinent to my little estate world when someone passes away. There's inheritance tax and there's estate tax. So for any of my Legal Tea listeners here in my state of Indiana, I have good news for you. Indiana repealed our inheritance tax. I think that got repealed 2011, 2012. So it's a non-issue for us here in Indiana. So y'all can zone out for a quick second while I touch on this inheritance tax thing. So one of the biggest differences between inheritance tax and estate tax is who gets taxed. With inheritance tax, the beneficiary receiving the inheritance is who is taxed. While with estate tax, the estate of the deceased person gets taxed before distributions are made to the beneficiaries. So let me just say that again, really just to make it clear. Inheritance tax, the beneficiary is who receives the inheritance, and that's who is taxed. While estate tax is the estate of the deceased person is who gets taxed before the distributions are made to the beneficiary. So here in my state of Indiana, like I said, they repealed the inheritance tax, but there are a small number of states that do still have inheritance tax. And according to NerdWallet, which is an article I linked in the source links for this episode, just to be mindful, I wanted to list out the states that do have inheritance tax. So Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Nebraska, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. That's who you guys are. And just really to confirm or to clarify, there is no federal inheritance tax, just state. And interestingly, that number of states that still has inheritance tax seems to decrease as time passes. The NerdWallet article actually mentions that Iowa, specifically, passed a bill just a couple years ago to begin phasing out their inheritance tax, and it will be completely eliminated for deaths beginning in 2025. Lastly, before I shift to estate tax, I also think it's pertinent to bring up income tax for 2 seconds in relation to inheritance tax, and here's why. If you inherit an account that's pre-tax dollars, so when I say that, think traditional IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, those sort of accounts. and you start taking distributions out of those types of accounts as a beneficiary, so someone's passed, you got your share of this type of account as a beneficiary, you will be taxed on it. But that's income tax, not an inheritance tax. So just FYI on that. Shifting to estate tax. So this is the tax, again, that happens on the estate of the deceased person before the beneficiary gets their inheritance. There is a federal estate tax, and there's even some states that have state and estate tax. Confusing, right? And some of my cynical folks out there would say that's intentional, but nonetheless, here we are. The states that have state estate tax is a short list. We've got state of Washington, Oregon, Minnesota, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maryland, and Maine. Now, if you're paying really close attention to this episode, Maryland is the only state that has a state inheritance tax and a state estate tax. So those states that I just listed have a state estate tax, but there's also a federal estate tax that is pertinent to all of us. And the difference is really just who gets the money. If it's a state estate tax, it's the state that gets it. And if it's a federal estate tax, the feds get it. So, yeah, there's a federal estate tax that we all have to be mindful of. Currently, in 2023, the federal estate tax exclusion amount is $12.92 million per person. And as a married couple, you actually get two of those. As a married couple, you get, I guess if you add those up, $25.84 million. So what does that actually mean? That means that estates that have less than those amounts, $12.92 million as an individual and $25.84 as a couple, there is not an estate tax, federal estate tax imposed on your estate when you die. However, if your estate exceeds those amounts, first of all, would you please adopt me? That would be cool. And second of all, and way more importantly, the amount of assets that exceed that amount or those amounts are taxed at a fairly not nice rate, ranging from 18 to 40%, depending on lots of things. And something to be mindful of, though, is that of those states that I named that have state estate tax, if their state exclusion amount is higher or lower, you may be subject to state estate tax and federal estate tax, or just one. Like the NerdWallet article notes, some of the estate tax exclusion amounts are actually much lower than those amounts that I just referenced, meaning it's more pertinent to people that have less than those millions of dollars that I referenced. Just something to be mindful of. So that's where we stand currently. In this episode, I referred earlier to how the federal estate tax exemption is supposed to sunset or decrease at the end of 2025. That's what is currently on the books that's supposed to happen. So to give you a little context, here's the quick scoop. In 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed, and through that, the federal estate tax exclusion amount increased. And just to give you an idea what happened, here's kind of a quick year by year starting in 2017 snapshot of the federal estate tax exclusion amounts. 2017 was $5.49 million per person. 2018, it jumped $11.18 million per person. And then ever since 2018, when it made that big jump, it just increased over time due to inflation. So 2019 was 11.4, 2020 was 11.58, 2021 was 11.7, 2022 was 12.06, and here today, 2023, 12.92 million per person. So yeah, you can see how it jumped in 2017, thanks to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Though here's the kicker. It is a temporary thing, my friends, because there's something called a sunset provision as part of this act. What does that mean? Well, without further action from Congress, the federal estate tax exclusion amount will go back to what it was pre-Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Oh, that's Millie, my basset hound, deciding to shake her ears. The amount is going to go back to pre-Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but yet adjusted for inflation, which, depending on the source, you'll find anywhere between 6 and 7 million per person, or so somewhere between 12 and 14 million as a married couple. So there's a couple thoughts on this whole topic. First, if you're listening and your estate may be impacted by these amounts that we're kind of throwing around, there are ways and there are tools that you can start implementing now in case they do let the estate tax exemption, the exclusion amount sunset. And you really should start acting now. Any solid estate planning attorney that is skilled in the high net worth space is going to start very soon, if honestly not already, getting really busy with helping clients address this possible sunset. So hear me loud and clear. Start getting in touch with your professional team now, because if you wait much longer, the best ones are going to be spoken for. I promise. And if you need a solid resource in your area, shoot me an email, legaltpodcast@gmail.com, and I'll get you names that will take excellent care of you, I promise. Now, a second thought on this whole topic is whether there will be action by Congress. So a second ago, I said, without further action from Congress, the federal estate exclusion amount will go back to what it was before 2017. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that Congress could alter the path that we're heading to. So Congress could swoop in and say, nope, let's not let this sunset at the end of 2025. Let's keep her going. Now, if you ask 10 different professionals who are in the tax and estate space whether they think Congress will let it sunset or not, I bet you will find we are all over the place. Some think that it's dependent on who is in the White House and Congress. Some think that it will absolutely sunset. Some say, no, they'll definitely keep it high. Some are like, what are you even talking about? And if that's the case, you should probably find a different accountant or estate attorney, because this is a really big thing that really anyone in this space should know. In my 12-year career so far, something I've learned in the estate space is not to react too dramatically to these kind of things. There have been so many times that the news is saying XYZ, and really XYZ doesn't happen at all. I operate by what does the law currently say and go from there. And the law currently states it is supposed to sunset. So if your estate so happens to be in the millions like that, start planning now. Start acting now. You basically have a little more than a year, and time flies. We all know that. So get your act together, rally the troops. You need a solid plan. And you know what? Don't sweat whether Congress is going to take action. If they do and they leave it high, then hey, you have done planning as I suggest, and you are set for if the exclusion amount ever comes back down. And if they do say to keep it, will they keep it forever? We don't know. And if they don't, as in Congress doesn't take action, you will sure be thankful that you got your rear into gear to get a plan in place. To me, it's all about assessing your risk. And there are far more risk and significant dollars on the line, and those are your dollars, to not get a plan in place. And, I guess to not get a plan together than to get a plan together, like kind of comparing apples to oranges. Congress, I don't know. My personal opinion is that if they do take action, if Congress does take action, which I honestly go back and forth on whether I actually think that they'll let it sunset or not. if they do take action, I think it will absolutely be in the 11th hour. That's just how they seem to roll, right? So if they do, we won't know until it's too late to actually get a plan together or not. So if you agree that they wait often until the 11th hour, you are basically left with a risk assessment. Get a plan together now or not. And I hope this episode has equipped you with information in order to make that decision best for yourself. Alrighty, I'm out of time, my friends. Let's wrap this episode up. Next week, we are back to the celebrity estate planning type of episode. And during that episode, we're going to dive into what happened estate-wise following the passing of a former Supreme Court Justice of the United States, Chief Justice Warren Burger. Now, I know this celebrity, and I say celebrity in air quotes, is not a popular name or anything, not like I've been kind of keeping my eyes on if there's anything that comes out of Jimmy Buffett's passing. That just came top of mind. But, I know it's not a really popular name, but his estate left a lot to learn from. And it's actually a really nice follow-up to this episode on estate taxes. So we will dive into that next Tuesday, Legal Tea listeners. Talk to you then and stay well.